And just like that, the hopes of a nation were dashed. The optimism the nation had crashed against a blue wave as Curaçao drew 0-0 with Jamaica at the National Stadium to qualify for their first World Cup. The stadium was rammed to capacity, no seating available, standing room non-existent as people pressed against each other by the railings in the walkway, and parents deftly handed kids to one another as whole families scaled the stadium walls. This was history in the making, one way or another, and the public wanted in on it. With the country reeling from Melissa, this was a time to turn our minds away from reality, if only for 3 hours. The JFF called on fans to fill the stadium and get behind the team. They held their end of the bargain, and for 90 minutes you couldn't hear yourself think. However, when the final whistle blew, you could literally hear a can drop beside you as the fans tried to process what they had just witnessed. The performance itself was embarrassing. The team played with no sense of urgency, little to no pressing of opponents, a refusal to fight and win second balls, and an inability to think on the field and adapt a strategy and tactics which were clearly failing. A lot of ink has been spilt on the ineptitude of the coach, some of it bordering on slanderous, quite frankly. Yes, we can all acknowledge he's no Pep Guardiola, but for those who want to remember, or do care to do a little history, they will know just what he did with lowly Middlesbrough and how highly that man was talked about in coaching circles during his heyday. To put it bluntly, he's no bum. But to be frank, he's also not an innovator. He is a creature of habit and comfort. What you see is what you get. And we saw that during the Nations League and Gold Cup. We are the team that played like a Steve McLaren team of old, which is quite frankly useless in the modern game. Blame should obviously and first lie with the JFF for appointing him and then not removing him after the summer's debacle. I don't blame my dog for being a dog. I don't question why Teef and Joe stole. I don't ponder why the devil is evil. It just is their nature, and to question it is to question the purpose of life, a futile task. The JFF had ample opportunity to remove the man and replace him with someone who could build a squad and utilize the strength and talents brought by these players. This could have been either a locally based coach like Whitmore, or even, if they chose to bite the bullet, could have gone for Miguel Coley, the man who, lest we forget, was overlooked in favour of McLaren. The JFF have dropped the ball big time, and they now find themselves in another unfortunate position, with them having to transition the technical director Rudolph Speed into the post of acting head coach. Now the accusations are of corruption, a stitch-up, a move that would make the late Dick Cheney proud. Imagine the head of the selection team searching far and wide for an option to manage the team, only to then realize that he himself, the man doing the searching, is best suited to do the job. Now, while I do get the suspicion, my eyebrows also were raised when I had read of Speed's appointment. To be blunt, what was the JFF and Mr. Speed to do? Who were they going to realistically hire? Realistically being the operative word. While I don't like it, Mr. Speed isn't a joke coach on the local scene or international scene. He is experienced and has won what there is to be won. He also knows the squad and the pool of players who will be playing the 1 and 2 playoff matches. Now, that can be viewed as either a plus or a minus, because it was these players who have shown themselves to be total misfits. The JFF has found itself in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario, and it's of its own doing when it comes to this head coach situation. If we win the playoffs, that won't be enough for the public to forgive the JFF and Mr. Speed for the debacle, and there will be calls by fans for him to go, as there currently are. However, if he fails, then there ends Mr. Speed's dream of ever managing the national team. Just like that. Now, to the outside observer, it looks like Mr. Rudolph Speed has studied his strategies and tactics. It seems he studied them very well, and he's implementing them by trying to bring in the fan favorite to do the job in the long term, Mr. Miguel Coley, as his assistant. That move is quite frankly brilliant on the part of Mr. Speed, because if he fails, that is, if Mr. Speed fails, Miguel Coley also fails. If Mr. Speed succeeds and we qualify, then he has potentially neutralized the biggest competitor for his job. Truly, it's a Machiavellian move. That, though, is where the failures of the JFF end. The debacle we saw on the 18th was solely down to the players. Anyone who has played any sport knows that the coach's job more or less ends once the players enter the field of play. This is even more true for international football, where players literally only have a few days with the coach on the training field. Once the players cross that white line, it's up to them. If they see that the strategy and tactics the coach is implementing aren't working, it is up to them to adjust and adapt on the field. Any international player who requires a coach to tell them, for example, that long balls aren't the situation and that you must try to pick the opponent apart with wing play after 20 minutes of failing with the long ball should not be anywhere near a football field. Any player who needs a coach to tell them to press an opponent in a do-or-die match needs to be banished from any team. Any player who needs external encouragement to receive a ball in a quick fashion during a World Cup qualifier needs to never play football again. The players have let us all down so badly that words don't even begin to do it justice. To be honest, we expect incompetence and mess-ups from the JFF. That's not new, even though it's upsetting. We at least expected the players to show professional pride. But hey, it seems we expected too much. And to be honest, how could we expect any different when the players don't respect the game or the fans? A lack of respect is the only explanation as to why they went out on a drinking bender the night before the match, and after that tepid, uninspired performance when the country was in mourning, they could go to a strip club, and not even the best one, as if to rub salt in the wounds. The team, barring a few players simply because they are young, is a write-off, and it does not deserve to qualify for the big game. There are no leaders in the current setup, just a bunch of playboys and prima donnas who have somehow believed the hype that they are good. Now, since someone needs to say it, I will. The players aren't that good. They are at best middling players who can potentially do a thing for a second division club or some awful team in Scotland or Russia. If they were good, that is, the locally born ones, they'd be playing at a higher standard. As for the overseas born players, you guys just suck. You do, and that is not an insult, because you have more talent in your tiny foot than I do in my whole body. However, you suck. You tried and you couldn't cut it for teams like England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, or even the US. So in a last-ditch effort to leave a mark on the international stage, You opt, late in your career more often than not, to play levels below your dream. Mason Greenwood, the alleged abuser, is the case in point. He has refused all call-ups because he knows the level we play at as a nation is not good, and he believes that his talents should be showcased at a higher level. Now, when he eventually realizes that the door is closed on him from the English FA, only then will he turn begrudgingly to the JFF and make his debut at age 26 or 27. The worst thing that can happen to Jamaican football is for us to qualify for the World Cup, as it would cement our bad habits and paper over cracks, leading us to ignore them. It hurts, but on balance, we don't deserve to be there, and we should be focusing on building a team for 2030. The 2030 mission must include the JFF imposing a standard and system of football in the youth tournaments it controls, forcing the parish FAs to comply with said standard of football, and inculcating that system of football in the national youth team and the senior team. It must hold camps for locally based players to get them knowledgeable of that system of play. And if they're still beholden to getting the diaspora on board to help, get them while they're young. To be blunt, we don't want or need 26, 27-year-olds who are not good enough for England making their debut for us. They need to be young, and more importantly, they have to want to play for us. Will it be easy? God, no. It's going to be difficult. A lot of money has been burnt, spent, gone, and the goodwill not there anymore. All because of this failed project. But if it is done, that is, if we fail to qualify and instead focus on building a decent program, we would reap immeasurable rewards. Supporting Jamaica is never easy, and now is no exception. We had a simple group and we blew it. And now our fate is in the hands of a sporting god who is more capricious than the sea. It's our bed. We made it. But my God, does it hurt. Let us learn from this misfortune and make sure that these mistakes are learned from.